I'm Mark Lawson. Much more importantly, this is Lionel Shriver, who is here to talk about her work in general, but specifically her forthcoming novel published early next month, Big Brother. This, as you will notice, is an after-lunch event. There's a reason for that, because anyone who reads this book, or indeed hears about it, may never eat again. So anyone eating in the audience, just, yes, finish, you finish, that's good. The reason, although it's a serious one, which we will discuss, is that the central character in the book, a businesswoman called Pandora
Haftanarson.
Pandora Haftanarson, in Iowa. She meets her brother after not having seen him some time. He comes to stay, and she meets him at the airport, fails to recognize him initially because he has become morbidly obese in the intervening period. And the book is about the reaction of her and her family and him to that eventuality. People who have read your journalism will know that there is, we'll talk about the extent to which it may or may not be autobiographical, but there is an autobiographical element to this.
I did have a reason for taking on this material and a reason why I did it now. I lost my older brother in 2009, mostly to the complications of morbid obesity. And so I'm acquainted with some of these issues up close. And I think that I can write from a position of sympathy more than judgment, which I think this material really demands.
And you had, I suppose, two options in a way. Memoir is now a very popular form, particularly popular with publishers, and many novelists have written personal memoirs, certain aspects of experience. Was it always, well, first of all, at what stage you began to think it might be a book, but once it did, was it always clear it would be fiction?
Well, I'm a novelist, and that's the form I work in, and I've never been interested personally in writing a memoir. In fact, one of the frustrations of doing publicity for books is that you're expected to be the focus of attention yourself and to become a character yourself. And that's not really my job. So I would rather the focus be on the books. And that's why I wouldn't write a memoir. I don't really want the attention on me. I don't want to talk about myself per se, but I do like to use my experience and my perceptions to craft something that is accessible to other people, and that's what any fiction writer does.
The whole idea of fame, because she's been on the cover of certain magazines, that is clearly, from your previous answer, that is your reflection as well.
Well, it's a sub-theme of the novel. The bizarre flatness of getting that kind of attention, which everyone seems to crave these days. So it's not only an examination of fat, primarily, it's also looking at this this craving for fame in our culture and what it's really like when you get it, even fleetingly. And also the strange dissatisfaction of getting anything you want. That whole business of well, you know, you said you want to be X, and now you are, and now what? So, I mean, it closes. The book actually brings those themes together in the end of the book, where it comes up with about the only thing that Pandora can offer about both these themes is we are meant to be hungry. The point is that, I mean, yes, it's a lot more enjoyable to be successful than a big failure. You know, that's not up for grabs. But I think the big surprise is the mildness of the experience. Whenever you have worked very hard and tried to achieve something, you imagine that if you do achieve it, then the experience will be overwhelming. You know, you'll jump up and down, you'll dance all the time, you'll be filled with life and joy. And it's not like that. It's more like Well, that's nice. You know, and that is disappointing. And it also comes with what's next, because as soon as you adjust to a certain level of success, then even achieving that level again is not achieving anything, if you will. That you have to raise the bar, and that's a relentless process. And it's a way of constantly instilling yourself with dissatisfaction again. In other words, you have to renew your sense of hunger. Well, our attitude toward what people weigh has become incredibly complicated. It's one of the things that I address in the novel, is what kinds of assumptions we make about people depending on what size they are. And actually, that's one of my favorite sections in the book, looking at the kind of character traits that we equate with someone who's extremely thin, for example. We usually think they're neurotic. We usually assume that they're just as much obsessed with food as people who are overweight. They just don't eat any. They're secretly miserable. They tend to be controlling, joyless. They tend to poop your party too. Now, and of course, with people who are overweight, we think they're indulgent. They have no discipline. When you throw some of these qualities together, it sounds as if they wouldn't make a very good employee, considering the assumptions we make about people who are fat. You can see why they're discriminated against in the job market. We also think they're miserable. None of these things may be true, right? And it's an amazing amount to impute to physical size.
Certain expressions. Do you have that, writing American English in England?
Yeah, it has become a bit of a problem. My ear is not as good as it used to be for American colloquialisms. I mean, for example, I had to ask my husband the other day, what do Americans still say trash can? Because they're not cans anymore. They're all plastic, just like wheelie bins, right? But do you still say trash can? I still haven't gotten a good answer to that question. The real problem, though, is that my publisher, HarperCollins, has a standard advisement to all of my copy editors that I have a problem with, quote, Britishisms. And so they see a Britishism under every bush. And I've had some copy editors, Britishism, and it's anything that seems unfamiliar is British. So, I mean, yes, I do have to keep an eye on it, and I rue the fact that my ear is a little off. It's a disadvantage. This isn't a boast. That's well put, and certainly if you're going to write about food and appetite, you're going to talk about the nature of gratification and what is the appetite for. I mean, I'm interested in the fact that I think we often eat hoping to feed something besides our stomachs. In fact, I think that's one of the smallest reasons we eat, or Westerners eat, is because we need some nutrition now. That's not it exactly. In fact, there's a little preface at the beginning of the book which talks about Pandora is reflecting on the fact that when she thinks back on the highlights of her life, she doesn't remember particular meals. That's what's so weird. I mean, I've had some good meals, but if you ask me, what were the highlights? Certainly I wouldn't say, well, there was this fantastic piece of fish. So given that it's so transitory, given that the satisfaction is so fleeting, what is it? What drives us to, what do we expect to get out of it? She looks at the fact that
in a weird way, food is more experienced both in anticipation and in memory, so that the actual eating part almost doesn't happen. And she rounds on the notion that food is more the idea of satisfaction than satisfaction itself, which is in fact much more powerful. I mean, this book was weirdly hard to write, partly because this is not a subject that has been unaddressed. We've talked about it relentlessly. It's all over the papers. It's all over TV. So I needed to find somewhere something that we haven't already said, right? And to take the discussion down a level. And that's, you know, this book's also a story, but in the passages that are more reflective, that's what I've tried to do. I just want to say, look, I've had a taste of it, and it's not what you think it is. So don't eat yourselves hollow that you don't have it. So much of life is looking down at your feet and realizing that you're wearing Dorothy's shoes, right? I mean, no, you don't actually need to be famous to be contented and to have joy in your life. And maybe, you know, I think it's worth going out on a limb and saying, I hate to disappoint you, but it's not that great. So don't, you know, if it doesn't come to you, it's okay. I figure that's doing a public service. It was bizarrely hard. And I think some of that was that the background made me sad. So that was part of it. But it was, I have to admit that the hard part, that what made it hard wasn't so much the emotional stuff. It was writing, especially the second section, because Edison and Pandora end up setting up an apartment together and going on an all-liquid diet. Do you know how hard it is to make that entertaining? Oh my God. I mean, I'm telling you, writing about weight loss is almost as tedious as doing it. And the thing is, I couldn't make it tedious to the reader. I mean, it was a hard balance to strike because on the one hand, I didn't want to bore you senseless. You know, Edison got up another day and had a protein shake. Turn the page. Edison got up on Tuesday and had a protein shake. I mean, I couldn't. It couldn't be too boring, but at the same time, you had to experience it with him. You had to go through it. You had to know what it was like. I wasn't about to have you turn the page and suddenly my big character is thin and that was it. I mean, that would have been cheating. And I mean, that's what you would have done maybe in a commercial fiction, but literary fiction has to have a little more integrity than that. And the other thing that made it hard to write that section was it made me hungry. I mean, honestly, every time I went to work on it, it was like I'd find myself back down in the kitchen staring at the refrigerator.